Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Politics Tonight. When President Bola Tinubu assumed office in May 2023, one of the sectors he promised to increase productivity was agriculture, thereby increasing food security. Now, 2 years into his first term, the country is still facing food crisis. Insecurity in rural areas, particularly in food-producing states, continue to disrupt agricultural activities. Additionally, extreme weather, including heat waves, droughts, and floods, has also made food production increasingly challenging nationwide. But recently, the government rolled out new policies and initiatives to increase food production, drive down prices, and tackle the cost of living crisis. However, Nigerians wonder whether the price hikes can be reversed, as their hope of relief lies there. Now, with this in mind, let's speak with the National Coordinator of Nigeria Cotton Society, Ololade Adineye. She joins me live in our Lagos studio. Good to have you join us. Good evening.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. So you are you're a major stakeholder in the cotton industry, which is also in the agricultural industry. So I want to begin with a promise that the president made in 2023, which is to revamp the agricultural sector and then boost food security. How well will you say that this administration has fared in that regard?
Thank you. First of all, I'll say that, we've come a long way. Nigeria's come a long way in terms of our economy, agriculture, government in, government out. They've been trying different interventions, but I've been working with the government for quite some time, not just this government, even the past administration. I was a prime anchor under the Anchor Borrower Scheme for Central Bank. I will say that with my engagement with the government, I can hand on chest say that I see seriousness, I see the willingness
with this
administration. As you said earlier, there's been a lot of policies, there's been a lot of, talk, intervention and all that, And with this administration, I'm not just seeing the talk, I'm seeing the walk as well, because I've been involved in the discussion and the planning behind the scene. Let's take different policies. You look at the food emergency, emergency declaration that the president made. When you look at the intervention plan and the strategy plan, you will see different points that talked about, going back to what you said, affordability, availability, and sustainability
as well.
Yes. That sustainability makes a whole lot of difference. What we have now is a plan that takes us from where we need to start from to get our result in a sustainable manner. There are a lot of things that we were doing wrong when it comes to agriculture. People were pumping in money, but things were not properly done. What this government is doing now is to do it the right way, in a way that is sustainable.
And let me come in there, because you mentioned that you were a prime anchor for the Anchor Borrowers program, and that program will understand that a lot of money, you've talked about pumping in money, a lot of money was put in, but there was no commensurate result. Was that your experience, and how is this administration bridging that funding gap?
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to say now. The past administration tried. The Anchor Borrower had the good and the bad side, because I was part of it. The good side wasn't really properly talked about. The bad side, people talk about that. One of the things I think failed the Anchor Borrower was there was no proper monitoring. But in this government, they are doing that. When we go back to how it should be done, we talked about irrigation, water management, soil analysis, soil assessment, and all those things, monitoring and evaluation. If you don't have that in agriculture, you cannot succeed. Now, the government has declared that state of emergency, and they have put all these things in place, working with different agencies and different ministries, the water ministry, irrigation and all that. It is even now that I understand there's even grants for irrigation. So all those things has to be put in place, for you to have sustainable agriculture. When you go into the farm to plant and you don't understand your soil type, you don't understand if this kind of seed, this soil grows this kind of crop, you plant and you get nothing out. They say, oh, this thing is not working. It's working, we're not doing things properly. So that's what I'm getting from this administration now. What we're not talking about, the conversation is not about just going into the field and plant. The conversation is about doing this properly for availability, affordability, sustainability, and easy access. Easy access for the farmers. The real farmers now, should have access to funds. We're having conversation as well, the private sector coming together with the public sector. You can't leave the government, when it comes, they make the policy. You can't leave them to say, okay, you've made a policy, then let's go home and stay down. No, we're not going to do that. We have to engage them. And what this government is doing is they're opening up that conversation. For example, I've had several meetings with the Minister of State for Industry, Senator John Enna. We've had several meetings, several stakeholders meetings, several engagement on how this should be done properly. He has asked a lot of questions. We've told him things. And, when you talk to them,
so they're also trying to get feedback from stakeholders.
Yes, they're getting that from stakeholders. We have to, when you do things that, you're not done properly, that's where you start from. So what did we do wrong? How should we go forward? So there's that engagement, and there's that open door for the private sector that understand how this should be done to come in and talk. So for me, I'll say that I see they're not just making policy. The Nigerian First policy, that gladdens my heart. There's blessing in the chaos. We only have to give our chaos time, and be patient with the chaos and systematically turn that into a blessing.
You talked about the monitoring mechanism that was not missing or absent in the previous administration, but now it's there in this administration. What are some of the mechanisms they've put in place, especially when you have given money or there is money involved, and then people are responsible for that? A lot of times what Nigerians hear is this is going to happen, but it really doesn't trickle down to those who actually need it. So what are the monitoring mechanisms in place?
Okay. The first thing is the stakeholders' engagement. Whatever policy is made has to touch the grassroots. You can't touch the grassroots without having that stakeholders' engagement and the feedback. So as I told you, we're having that conversation. They're having the stakeholders' engagement. We're getting the feedback. We now identify the areas that things were not properly done, and we're putting measures in place. The government are putting measures. Okay, let me give you an example. Look at the University of Agriculture. They're not doing what they should be doing. They should be engaged. For example, extension services. They should provide that. It wasn't properly provided in the last administration. But now we're engaging them. So what they're doing now is that they're not sitting down. They're having that conversation. They're engaging the right people that should be engaged. We're ticking the boxes. Why did this happen? Who are the people that should make this happen? Get in touch with them, call them, put a plan together. We have the roadmap. Let's work towards the roadmap. So we're setting the setting. For me, I'm talking about my engagements now. They're setting the roadmap with the milestones, with activities. Now back to the private sector. I told you they're engaging the private sector. The private sector now are saying, these are the things you've promised. These are the things we are made to do. So back to what I said, because we have a government that are listening and they showing the willingness, to do things right. They are calling on to us, the private sector, to work with them. So that's what it is. So that's where you have the monitoring, accountability, holding people responsible. This happened. You are the one meant to fill in this gap. We hold you responsible.
And let's get to your own sector. One of the things that really would deter anybody from starting a business, especially when it has to do with manufacturing in this country, would be raw materials. And then even though we have those raw materials, they are not, we don't produce in quantity. And then the little that is available would be quite expensive. Now, I know that you are in the cotton industry, and we know that, look, our production is quite lower than our actual potential. And I just wanted to ask you how this government is engaging in that regard, because when you look at the world today, even in Africa, we're not even top 5, and we have a lot of potential.
Thank you. You know, I say this all the time. For one, I'm tired of talking about the potential. We've talked about potential for too long. We should start moving into this should be our reality. What you said is very true. When you look at the world index, the cotton world index, our place is filled up by some other countries, right? Because we don't have what we should have. We don't have the quantity that we should have. So back to what the government is doing. So now, you know, the Nigeria First policy is part of what is driving this new plan that we have. So we in the cotton sector, right, we call it the Renew Hope as well. We have our own New Dawn in the cotton sector, not just the cotton textile and the garment, where we know there's a gap that has to be filled and where we want to fill that gap. Like every other agricultural product that we have in Nigeria, the first stage is your feedstock for the CTG, the entire value chain, which is the cotton. When that is not properly done, the other side the fall off will affect the other side of the chain. So in the cotton sector now, in the cotton production, we're now talking quality and quantity. You know that they just approved the CTG board. That's one of the moves.
That was the National Economic Council.
Yes, that's one of the moves. The cotton producers in Nigeria now came under one umbrella. They used to be Copman and Nakotan. Now we're all under one body. That's part of saying to the society, we're ready to make the change. So now we're talking quality and quantity. So quality getting us ready to open up from our sector, open up the forex market, ready for export-driven cotton production, and then to service the other value chain. Quality, doing things properly. So it is our seed, our soil, and the agronomic practices. So once those 3 things are put in place, you will see us getting back to
And I like that you mentioned seed, because when you speak to a lot of people in that sector, one of the things, especially the smallholder farmers, one of the things you hear them say is that, look, the quality of seed they had gotten over the years, was really poor, and so it also affected the quality of the cotton that we had. Is this government addressing that challenge of the quality of seed?
Definitely. So right now, as I told you, a lot of conversation is going on, I know that. Part of the conversation is that we're starting from the beginning, and the beginning is the seed. So we're not controlling the value chain for just the farm. We're controlling the value chain from the seed, where we have the seed production lab in Nigeria, where we produce a seed, where we can actually check our seed for quality. We can do the quality control, the quality assurance. So now, as you said, bad seed. But right now, we're working on different varieties of seed to know which one works for us. When you're talking about your seed, it's one thing to have good seed. It's one thing to understand what seed work with what soil. Then the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria has different soil formation, right? So what we're doing is, with all the varieties of seed that we're working towards now, we're working with all the seed production agencies, we're working with the University of Agriculture, we're working with the Brazilian team as well to make sure that we get this right. So, with the seed tested with our soil, we want to find out which seed works for us. We take the seed to lab, we know this is the one that works for us. We start producing locally in Nigeria. So, what we're doing now is that very soon, all this issue of we don't have the seed and all that is going to be a thing of the past.
Okay, so it's quite interesting, because you've talked about those who are in that sector already, but we know that cotton is not a food crop, which means that it really would not bring food to the table directly, but it's a cash crop that can then be expanded to provide jobs, and that's what a lot of Nigerians will be interested in. How do we come in? If we really want to make money, government has said they also want to provide jobs. Is that sector being revamped to be competitive globally? and also, you know, become one of the platforms in which government can also employ, you know, or create jobs?
You know, back in the days, the CTG sector used to be the second largest employer of labor. And in any country, that, especially the developing country, they develop through the CTG sector. And
sorry, for those who are wondering what CTG is, that's cotton, textile, and garment.
Thank you. And then, you know, there's something we call the crop rotation. Even when you plant your cotton, you still feed through the cotton. You know, when you plant your cotton, say you have a 10,000 hectares that you're planting, for the health of your soil, you need to have about 2,000 hectares aside for other crops, for crop rotation to maintain the moisture of the soil. And then when you plant, part of a CSR for all the plant, the cotton farm that we have the garden farm and the kitchen farm. That takes care of the community. So the cotton is not just, we're just planting cotton. Part of it, we're feeding the community. Every community that we go into, we're feeding. And because of a crop rotation, you know, we have to plant other crops as well. So that is one. Now, employment. It is a major employer of labor. Let me break it down for you. When you go from your seed all the way to your garment, I tell you, you have several factories in there. And the number of people you employ is beyond imagination. When you take your cotton from the farm to the first stage of processing is the ginnery. So from your farm, say you have 1 hectare to a farmer. Imagine how many farmers you can employ. You have direct and indirect labor. Over 100,000 of employment on that farm only. Now, when you come to the first phase, so you have the ginnery, that you separate your seed and your lint. From your lint, before you even get to the yarn and everything, you have the sanitary towel, you have the pampers, you have different byproducts. Those are major employers of labor. Then you have from your seed, where you have your seed oil, your seed cake, you know, several products as well. Before you now get to your textile, you know, where you have your towel, you have your blind, you have chinos, you have denim, you have t-shirts, you have all that, before you now get to the garment. So imagine the number of people that can be employed. Imagine the number of employment we're pushing out of Nigeria. Now we're saying that put this sector together, which is what we're working on. The government is working on this. Then we start employing the youth.
So I'm going to have this conversation with you over and over again. I wish we could continue, but my time is up. We're going to have this conversation with you because you seem quite optimistic about what this government is doing. Over and over again, we'll have you to assess, you know, what is being done in that sector. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having
National
me.
Coordinator, Nigeria Cotton Society, Ololade Adeneye. A pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.